Welcome back. Today, let's blow up an old myth. Revenue isn't just sales job, it's everyone's job. This is one of our favorite subjects. Michael and I, we talk about this all the time. And actually, I think we even alluded to it in our first video. Everybody should be thinking about, revenue, right? So that's the key because that's what's going to drive the company forward. Michael, from your perspective, what do you see? Where are some of the disconnects?
In on technology teams, frequently we're hyper disconnected in a way, right? Like people think, here's a task list. This is the things we should work on. You know, when I one of the things I say to my teams all the time and to people who I coach and mentor is you should really try to work someplace where there's good revenue. It seems like a simple thing to say, but it's really important to work in a place where revenue is really, respected. And it's like we talk about when they talk about chemistry on winning teams. Like there's always good chemistry on winning teams and not great chemistry on losing teams. And is it the winning that creates chemistry, or is there chemistry before? Maybe a little bit of both. But similarly, when you're working in an organization that's winning and that's creating revenue and creating value, then you need to communicate to your teams that the reasons that you make these decisions for whatever they are, lead to what our goals are as it relates to market position, revenue, strategic positioning for the future, all of these things. And when you talk about what your business goals are and then you align the work to it, your teams perform better and they feel like they're part of it. Like we said, if we're winning, we're all winning. If there's revenue and I'm building software that does fulfillment and the fulfillment is more efficient and it's faster and customers are happy, then I am participating in creating value for the company. And, a lot of times when I meet with engineering teams, especially when I join companies, the feedback I get is they're not sure why they're working on the priorities that have been identified. And that's just a bummer. It seems like such an easy thing to solve. Um, and a lot of times in complicated companies that run lots of different businesses or market conditions are challenging, like today, sometimes you might say, hey, listen, there's a lot up in the air right now. We're going to go down this path because we think it's right, but we all need to be flexible, right? Business is dynamic. And so I think by showing everybody in a company that what we do is hard and that we're doing our best to create the right plan, and that we're going to be flexible, but we're going to be communicative and transparent, that helps the overall process. And, impulsive decisions made by leadership, you know, here and there, great. The leader is like, we have this great idea. We should really stop what we're doing and do this new thing. I love it. But a company that's built on impulsive decisions, super hard way to operate.
Definitely. And I think that, the key message, you talk about being transparent, but it's the consistent messaging, right, across the teams because you want to have that level of conviction both on the, engineering operation side and on the sales side, right? So that everybody understands like what we're selling, what we're positioning and how it's going to solve a particular, problem, for a client. There's nothing more frustrating, I know for myself on the sales side when I bring a tech team and to, talk to the client about what we're trying to figure out. And if the tech team is kind of talking in a vacuum and not necessarily relating to what the client issue is. Now, first thing that I'll say is shame on the salesperson, including myself, if I didn't do a good job at bringing the tech team up to speed as to what the client, roadmap is, what is the problem that we're trying to solve, and what are the key points that the tech team should make during the call so that there's clarity around the whole message. But that's a common thing that I often see where you go to a joint meeting and you figure, "Oh my goodness, this is gonna get totally botched up because we look disjointed."
And I've done this, unfortunately. I've been thinking a lot about this particular situation I was in about 10 years ago, where on the sales calls, I overemphasized the value of the tech stack. I wanted to talk about it. I was dying to talk. And the tech people in the room were a little bit interested because it was just fun to talk about tech. But I lost all of the business leadership and I wasn't able to demonstrate that I really understood why I was in the room because I was telling them how great the technology was. And they wanted to hear why the technology I was, proposing was going to help increase sales and efficiency. That's all they wanted to know. And I'm talking about, complex tech stack data stuff that, is again, it's interesting to a small group, but it didn't have a place on the sales call. And I think especially when you include tech teams with your clients, you need to really prep them to say what you want them to communicate, right? What are the features? If you're going to communicate timelines, how do you communicate security, quality, velocity? Those are the things you want your tech teams to talk about. And to support the sales process, I'm working with a client now and they're concerned that the vendor who they're working with doesn't understand what their business goals are. The vendor is a tech vendor. And so they need help translating what their business goals to this tech vendor are because the tech vendor keeps talking about things that don't seem important to my client. And so I had to call the vendor and say, you're going to lose this deal because you're unable to communicate what the client needs, so much so that they don't think your software does the thing that they need. And when I say that to the vendor, they're like, our software does exactly what they need. And I said, that all may be true, but they don't think so. And so what are you going to do in the sales process to demonstrate that you're listening to what your client's needs are and responding in a way that shows that your software does the thing they need? And, you know, it's a softball. Like this should not be hard, but the tech team's inability to demonstrate their business acumen is losing them the deal.
Right.
And by the way, the tech team shouldn't be communicating. There should be a consulting partner or a leadership person doing it, not a head of engineering.
Yeah, and a common thing, I mean, I do this all the time when I'm working with salespeople. I'll always use the expression, "Don't show up and throw up," right? Because you're so excited to talk about what
Yeah.
our capabilities are. The same applies to the tech side, right? Don't show up and throw up because you want to brag about all the cool technology and the great innovative way of how you built a particular, application. You want to stay focused and you want and I agree with you. It should be a consulting type of role and it's sales responsibility to get the tech team up to speed on what are the hot buttons, right? What are the hot points that we need to hit during this sales pitch so that we don't get lost in just over volunteering information? I I
Yeah.
I think I think to summarize what we're really saying is revenue is a shared scoreboard, right? Everyone
Yeah.
gets to play and
Yeah.
and that's the challenge. So I think the call to action that we'd like to leave everybody with is who do you think is the most underrated revenue driver in a company? Shout them out in the comments and let's start a conversation around that.